It's time to fasten your seatbelt and rev up that engine. It's time to go on Pit Row. On Pit Row is your weekly look inside the world of NASCAR. Now live, here's the pit crew, Steve Ronkowitz and Charlie Turner.
I'm waiting for DW.
Oh, you know what? I forgot.
Let's go on Pit Row, boys.
Hey,
We're all sitting here looking, okay, who's going to talk first?
no, it's TNT, man. He's gone. He's on vacation. We
Okay.
gotta find Ralph Shaheen or somebody.
Well, okay, get on the phone. Get him.
I'll have to call Dahlen back. And does Dahlen back have a stupid saying at the beginning of a race?
Thankfully, no.
You just have a stupid saying throughout the race.
You could always write one for him. I'm sure Kyle Petty's got a couple.
That's right. Hey, I was busy working this weekend, so I didn't get to see the coverage. Was it better than Fox, or is it right?
Well, to me, it was better. I don't know how Dan feels about it, but I thoroughly enjoy those guys. I think, the fact they're only going to be on for, 6 races or something is probably a plus. But I was amazed at how much negative comment there was on Twitter and Facebook. Were you, Dan?
Yeah, I think they're the best group, the best 3-man group of the 3 stations and networks, and I express that from time to time. And it is amazing how quick you are to get trolled.
Oh, yeah. Are you crazy?
Yeah, you've got to be kidding. That was they're the worst. So, a lot of people like Fox. I don't know why. A lot of people, eat high sugar cereals and watch American Idol
and drink light beers, right?
Yeah. There's no accounting for taste.
The one thing that gets me, guys, and again, like I said, I was working this week, so I didn't get to see the broadcast, but it seems to me that TNT has less of a group to do a race. You got the 3 guys in the booth, obviously. Fox has the 3 guys in the booth. They have 3 guys in the Hollywood Hotel or whatever the hell they call it now, and ESPN's just as bad, having to have 6 or 7 or 8 people in what would be a normal commentator's position. Is TNT? Did they do the same thing?
I don't think so, and I think part of that is they don't have they don't have all the other shows they're trying to promote, like ESPN does, and ESPN/ABC does, and Fox/ whatever they are does. I think that's part of the reason you get those extra bodies in there, is they're trying to cross promote other shows. Plus, they've got Fox has 3 clones of Michael Waltrip that show up everywhere. They have them. There's one in the pits, there's one in the booth, there's one in the Hollywood Hotel, there's one in the bathroom in the hotel. They're all over the place.
Yeah, and I think since it's only 6 weeks, they can only put so many resources against it. Probably. I think it tightens up their coverage quite a bit, though. So.
Me too.
Well, yeah, that was my point. Was that I think it actually makes it a better product that they're actually putting out, because you only have those 3 guys, and you don't have 3 other guys who are trying to make some sort of comment that really has no basis of any importance whatsoever.
It's kind of the video equivalent of photobombing. They just feel like they have to throw something in, or their voice won't get heard, and it's usually pretty stupid.
Yeah, we have a local baseball version of that called the Detroit Tigers, but that's another subject totally. But okay, so
it's where it comes out of the keyhole, buddy.
Yeah, the key. I want to tell you, we can't digress too much from this, but I was listening the other night, and I think I hate Dan Dickerson almost as much as Jim Price, because he's now competing for space in that broadcast, and there is no dead air in the Detroit Tiger radio broadcast. None.
Nope.
0.
Nope.
One of them's fighting for it all the time. Okay, so enough of that. Enough of we spent our 5 minutes on broadcast. There you go, Steve. So now we're going to talk about a race. And it was a pretty good race for a polka race. I thought it was pretty good. One of the things I really like about this racetrack, and I was thinking about it as I was driving Sunday, because I was actually in the car for the first part of the race, and I was able to visualize the cars on that racetrack because it's unique. It looks so unique. You know, there's no. It looks like for one thing, like the grandstands and the front stretch and all. It looks like it reminded me of Belmont from the previous night watching the Belmont Stakes and horse racing. It looks like a horse track sort of. And then you've got that is it the Long Pond straightaway that has the trees along the back? You know, the trees are right up against the fence. There is no place in auto racing, in my mind anymore, that you can see where there are trees close enough to the racetrack for the air of the cars going by to affect the trees. That Pocono's the only place. There used to be all over Europe, you know, when they raced Formula One cars almost through the trees, you used to get that stuff a lot. But now you just don't see that. It's either grandstand or, you know, parking lot. So it's cool. I like the visuals of the racetrack. Dan and I talked a little bit before the show started. I'm glad it's only 400 miles long now, but not bad.
One of the great things I liked was a couple of still pictures I saw coming down that front stretch. And, you know, a lot of times you'll see pictures of cars 3 wide or 4 wide at a racetrack. I swear to God, they were 7 wide coming down there at a couple of points.
Yeah, that's always one of the fun things about Pocono is that they've got so long to do those things, and then they have to narrow up into that first turn. It's a good track to watch on TV. Been there a time or two sitting in the stands. A little harder to see things from the stands, but it's unique, and I think it has its place in NASCAR. It is, however, one of the few races that I was glad they dropped down to 400 miles.
Ask Steve about working as the pit reporter at Pocono. Now TNT, even though they have a downsized crew, they still probably have 3 or 4 pit reporters there. Steve was the only pit reporter for an ARCA race there in 2008.
Yeah,
only
absolutely.
one.
And not only did I have to run up and down pit lane, but I was the garage reporter as well. And at that time, I'm trying to think who the female was.
It was Chrissy Wallace.
Chrissy Wallace. Yep, Chrissy Wallace was the big female driver at the time, and the focus was on her. And of course, it was about lap 4 when she dropped out of the race. So the immediate response was, "Go get some audio from Chrissy Wallace," which was, of course, about a mile and a half from where I was, which was on the far end of pit lane. And she wasn't talking anyhow. She was too busy canoodling with Tony Stewart.
Yeah.
Of course, you had a long break there because there are never any wrecks or anything in an ARCA race. So.
Yeah. That was beginning of the end, I think, right there. For my body.
I thought you were gonna. I didn't think you were gonna survive it. I know that.
Well, between the drive there, the walking and running, and then the drive home, I damn near didn't.
So anyway, again, we digress, but we do have some inside stories about Pocono. So.
And not to mention that they have the most Nazi security force of any racetrack on the circuit, so you got to throw that in there as well.
Oh yeah, and well, it starts at the top. It starts in their PR department, and we ran afoul of that again this time. It's just unbelievable when you have stories about. There were just a whole bunch of stories about Dover's attendance drop the week before the race. Dover will do, they're encouraging all the social media stuff. They're trying to get more appearances by the drivers the week of the race, trying to do anything to create this community to get more people that want to come to the racetrack. And then Pocono the week later, out in the middle of frickin' nowhere in the mountains of Pennsylvania, and they're denying, arguably one of the best blogs in the industry access because we were a little bit late getting our application in. I'm just stunned.
Yeah, welcome to my world. That's why that portion got sent to you.
Yeah, that's fine, but man, I should have sent you. I don't know. I might have copied you the letter I sent back to this girl. It was just crazy.
I'd be interested to see it, but yeah, that's a long-going deal with them. Is that they make it so difficult, like they are so flippin' important. Yeah. And they're just a blip on the radar in the big world. Now, if we were getting that kind of trouble from Le Mans, France, I could live with that a little bit.
Well,
But,
Indianapolis Motor Speedway is difficult too. We've had issues there. I kind of understand it there. Daytona's difficult. I kind of understand it there. I don't get it at Pocono.
Yeah.
I just whatever. That's their racetrack. They do whatever they want. My blog, I'll write about whatever I want.
There you go.
I'll write about Indy cars this week.
I'm staying out of this.
There you go. Horse races.
Hey,
We're about horse racing.
There you go. Hey, I don't want to change the subject, but I'm going to change the subject. I read in the local newspaper today here in Toledo, Ohio, that, of course, coming to Michigan, they have to write about local people. Sam Hornish Jr. had an interesting article written about him, how he is currently the front runner to be in the soon-to-be vacated number 21 for Wood Brothers for 2015. And I thought that was kind of interesting that may be where his career path will lead him.
It is an interesting story. That surprises me. I didn't even know there was a connection. Has he ever even driven a Ford?
Well, yeah, I think he did because last year Penske had Ford, so
that's right. Yeah, okay.
He was driving Ford last year for Penske. So, but that kind of caught me by surprise. It's kind of an interesting. Of course, Trevor Bayne is going to be leaving there to go play at Roush for whatever's left of Roush next year. So that will leave that 21 vacant for however many races they're going to be able to run.
I see we're joined by Beth Ann. Hey, Beth Ann, can you hear us?
Yeah.
She can hear us. We can hear her. All right. Hey. Sometimes things work out. Well, welcome aboard. That flipping back to that Roush thing. It had been rumored for several weeks that Carl Edwards was going to be. Carl Edwards and maybe Greg Biffle were going to be leaving there. It looks like now Biffle's going to stick around. I don't know if that's been made official yet or not, but they're still making noises like Carl's going to be gone, and not to Joe Gibbs. Now the rumor is maybe Penske. Any clarification on that?
Well, if the usual 100% denial that is going to happen is a harbinger of probably becoming a positive, I would say, yeah, it's a done deal because Penske said there was absolutely no truth to the rumor. There was no discussions. It was not going to happen. So therefore, obviously, that means it will happen in a short period of time.
I think Carl will be a pretty good match there.
I think so. I think he'd probably work well with Keselowski. He'd probably work well with Joey Logano. It might be a pretty good force to be reckoned with.
Well, and he's a big enough name where he probably can bring some sponsorship with him, which has been that's been the problem. Every place that anybody wants to add a car the last couple.
Well, yeah, and the other thing is talking about the Biffle deal is the rumor that I had on Biffle was that 3M, which is basically the #1 sponsor on that car now, is a Roush sponsor, not a Biffle sponsor. So the 3M sponsorship would stay with the 16 car, whoever would be driving it, and their first choice is Greg Biffle. So that would kind of lend you to believe that maybe that match will continue.
Well, that certainly shakes that team up. You put if Greg, I assume, so Greg Biffle becomes the lead driver at Roush under that roster lineup, I would think, don't you? I mean,
that's a large wow on my.
Yeah, it's not gonna. That's a Jim Price type wow. That's I know maybe that's a little wow. I don't know.
But that just absolutely takes that team and turns it into a third-rate team in my mind.
How do you feel about that, Dan?
They do seem to have slipped in the last bit. Even with David Reagan, nice guy, good driver, I'm sure, but they've had that third team be less relevant than the other teams. Now, if they've only got two teams, and one of them is less relevant than the other, and the other is not particularly relevant in the first place, we could be looking at. I don't see Roush going away completely, though. I see Roush rebuilding. It's hard to think of them as not being a superpower. I think right now they are just going through some difficult times.
That is one of those teams where the team owner has been, I think, the unquestioned leader of that team. It's not like it's been run, in my mind, not like it's been run by a figurehead owner with a real impressive what do you call it, director of operations. Jack's getting up there in age. Is this you think this is a result of that? Or is there some? There's probably changes going on at the top of that organization that we're not aware of that are affecting some of this stuff.
Well, if you look at a few of these teams, we talked about this for the last 2 years, how there's going to be a changing of the guard in drivers. And that changing of the guard has started pretty much in earnest this year.
Mm-hmm.
How long is it going to be before there's a changing of the guard in owners? You got Jack Roush, who's up there in age. You've got Penske, who's up there in age. You got Ganassi up there in age. Joe Gibbs, of course, he's not really involved because it's his son now.
JD's pretty much running.
Yeah, so you look at some of these teams like Roush, like Ganassi, and you just wonder how long they want to stick around and do this stuff.
And I think you probably can throw Childress into that same group. So you've got a huge chunk of the field covered by those drivers or those owners. I think the interesting question in the next couple of years will be who emerges. And will Phil Parsons now become something? Will they get sponsorship if it's out there to be found? Or who's going to be? Nobody thought Rick Hendrick would be Hendrick Motorsports when he first came on the scene back in the 80s. So who is that next guy who we're going to be talking about 10 years from now? Could be fun to watch.
Well, here's the one that I'm waiting to hear an announcement of. Is I think Roush's decline started when they let Mark Martin go, and it also coincided with Mark Martin's decline. Mark Martin became this vagabond driver for I don't know how many teams he was with after he left Roush, but 4 or 5 major teams probably. He moved from one to the other. Now he's not driving really at all. I don't know. Maybe he's going to make a couple of appearances at some place. I don't know. But I have to believe that he's looking for an ownership position. And maybe he's one of those guys that could go into one of those places where I don't know if he's ever burnt any bridges, but if we're someplace where he doesn't have burnt bridges and come in and be a transitional guy that could maybe run one of those major teams at some point.
Now, I'm certainly no insider, but I've never heard any rumors about Mark wanting to be an owner. I've never heard any rumors about him having troubles with his owners.
No, me either.
They all seem to be pretty happy with him, and he fills the role that they need filled at the time. But that is probably where the next big owner is going to come from, though, is one of the racers that that goes away with enough resources to attract some sponsorship.
Jeff Gordon.
Right.
That's Steve's wish.
Hey, Michael Waltrip, for all the guff they've gotten, and he made that segue really fairly seamlessly.
Mm-hmm.
Raced for a little bit, still races when he can in the third car, and but he made the transition from driver to owner pretty easily. And it's probably going to be a driver like that who wasn't great. Richard Childress wasn't great as a driver and ends up being better as an owner than he was as a driver.
Yeah, I would think though that if it's a driver like that, it would be a driver like Michael Waltrip who has some dynamicism to his personality. Somebody who can attract sponsorship, which Michael certainly can do.
Yeah, well, Michael had the big advantage that he had Napa in his back pocket and he had Aarons in his back pocket, and that pretty much was what started his race team, having those two sponsors, picking up a huge amount of the bill to begin with. Napa obviously has left since, but those you need to find somebody who has that sort of panache, I would think, with some sort of sponsorship availability to them. Is that Mark Martin? I don't know.
Well, maybe Mark Martin, maybe he still has a relationship with Viagra and can get started that way. Oh, come on, it was just too easy.
He could have a big deal.
Yeah.
They could erect a team.
But if it lasts more than 4 hours, he'd have to disband it.
Maybe that's the real reason NASCAR's been trying to get the races under 4 hours.
They can do commercials. Oh
I can't believe Beth Ann isn't chiming in on this mess.
She's laughing. there could be, you know, depending on who is driver, if he's got a 2-car team, they could do a commercial of dueling bathtubs too. That would be, I think those are always interesting. Maybe they could explain that to me.
I think that's the other guys.
See,
Not that I'm an aficionado of.
Sounds like you got this down,
those
Dan.
commercials.
Who was the guy that we had on the show a couple times? It wasn't for the Wood Brothers, but that's what I'm thinking of.
See, now that would be the perfect scenario to have Cialis on the car.
The Wood Brothers, yeah.
The Wood Brothers, yeah.
Martin can go partner up with the Wood Brothers. That would be perfect. Okay, well, we've let this slide into ridiculous.
Well, hey, that's all right.
Maybe we should start talking about Michigan. Well, we didn't, you know, maybe we should mention who won the race.
Wait, was there a race last week?
Yes, and we haven't even met the single most popular driver in the sport wins a race, and we don't mention it till 20 minutes into our show. No wonder.
Our ratings.
No wonder we're so successful.
Well, everybody knew he was going to win that race.
Really?
Yeah. Well, absolutely.
Okay.
I mean,
tell me your scenario there.
Well, you know, we know that he's going to win, you know, 3 or 4 races this year because he's going to win the championship if he can, you know, find a way to eke out past Jeff Gordon.
He only has to win one more race. That's the last one of the year.
The last one of the year. He got his second race to guarantee that he will be in this chase. There's no doubt now that he is in. So, you know, somewhere along the line he was going to get another win. I don't see why it couldn't have been at Pocono. I mean, he hadn't ever had any real success there, but you know, I think that his team is, and this is the question that you had put up on the website, Charlie, was the fact, you know, who's the leading team, and right this minute, I would say he's the leading team. Yeah,
the question was who's the number one driver at Hendrick Motorsports? As
of this minute, I would say it's him.
What do you think, Beth? Who's the number one? We had a lot of interesting comments, and we got to do that read before we forget about it too. But in fact, why don't we do that, Steve, before I ask Beth about this?
All right. Well,
our question, trying to draw out the comment of the week this week, was who's the number one driver at Hendrick Motorsports after Pocono?
Well, and you can submit the Shell Saver Card comment of the day, and you can take home that $50 Shell gift card. Every time Joey Logano, driver of the 22 Shell Pennzoil Ford Fusion, wins a 2014 points race, Shell Saver Card holders save 22 cents per gallon on any grade of Shell nitrogen-rich gasolines or Shell diesel just by using their Shell Saver Card the Wednesday, or if you prefer, the Wednesday after the race. Offers valid up to 25 gallons. Visit shell.us/Wednesday for the details. Ta-da!
Yeah. Last week our winner was Stacy Lowe, who put up her comment came after Junior won the race on Sunday, but we don't really cut this thing off until we decide to cut it off. And she gave us 1,000 likes for the picture that we put up, so that she bribed my way into this thing. So, who do you think, Beth? Who's the number one driver at Hendrick Motorsports?
Well, I'm still gonna have to go with Jimmy. He's, you know, they just have to prove to me that they can, you know, close the deal on him. That's all. I just don't think, you know, okay, Junior's won and all that kind of stuff, but I still think it's Jimmy.
I have this theory in my mind that I'm not so sure that Mr. Hendrick doesn't think it's still Jeff Gordon.
I hope so. Keep winning races, Jeff. Win a championship and then get the hell out of the sport.
It's pretty easy to get enthusiastic about Junior just because you get swept up in the wave that's going past. He's still inconsistent until he starts to string together top tens for more than 3 or 4 in a row. I think it's kind of difficult to put him to say that he's the lead driver there. You know that Johnson can string those together kind of at will, or could. Right now he's running he's got a 4-week top 10 streak going. Michigan could be a challenge for him, but he's hitting a lot of tracks that he's good at. So I got to agree with that. I don't think until someone knocks him completely off the pedestal, you can say it's anyone but Jimmy Johnson.
Well, here's what I put up on the Facebook pages. I think that I think possibly that Mr. Hendricks still thinks it's Jeff Gordon. I think it's Jimmy Johnson myself. NASCAR Nation thinks it's Dale Earnhardt Jr. I'm sure. I mean, if you took a vote, you're going to get that Junior's the number one there. And I think the Cougar community still likes Casey Kane. So that's what I think.
Casey Kane's still employed?
He's still there.
Is he making races?
He was in a car long enough to get pissed off at Kyle Busch this week.
Yeah, and Casey Kane and Pocono are not a good mix.
No.
There's some horrendous crashes there. Casey Kane and Kyle Busch, not a good couple.
No.
So that was the perfect storm coming together.
All right. Well, we've got about 5 minutes or thereabouts that we should probably spend talking about the fantasy implications of Michigan International Speedway. They don't really call it Michigan International Speedway anymore. Did you notice that? They just call it Michigan Speedway. So when you say MIS, you're dating yourself, which is one of the many ways I date myself daily. But
they're just calling it MS now?
I guess.
As opposed to PMS?
Just Michigan Speedway. Yeah.
It doesn't have the ring to it, I'm sorry.
Doesn't. No, I agree. But if you look at all their PR stuff, it's all Michigan Speedway now.
Oh, really? Yeah, that kind of slipped past me. I still call it Michigan International. Then again, I still call it Dover Downs. So.
Yeah. It's all right. Well, your beard's the same color as mine, Dan, so we're not hiding anything. There's no big deal.
Yeah, really. I think I tweeted out sometime back the commercials for the hair coloring stuff. I don't get that. I earned every gray hair on this head.
You betcha.
I'm going to wear them proudly. But,
you bet, yeah.
Michigan, the 2-mile tracks, I think they're prone to streaks. Of all the tracks that are out there for comparatives, Pocono and Indy are probably pretty close. Phoenix and New Hampshire are close. But Auto Club in Michigan, there's a 4-degree difference in banking between the two, but there really is not much difference between these two tracks. And if you run well on one, you run well on both. We're lucky that we've got Auto Club in the books so that you can it helps evaluate the rookie drivers or the part-time drivers or the drivers that have only been around for a couple of years. And we've got some recent stats. And then you can look back at who's performed well at Michigan and get some good numbers there, with the understanding that things change. Roush Fenway Racing, we talked about a lot in the first segment. They seem to have lost some of their mystique everywhere, and that mystique was never more felt than it was at Michigan and California Speedway. And its loss is going to be felt even more so at those tracks for that reason. Still, you've got Greg Biffle that's coming into this weekend with a 4-race top 10 streak at Michigan. If he's going to turn his season around, it's going to be at a place like this. Probably did say the same thing when we went to Kansas, and he struggled there. So there are no guarantees in this sport any longer. But I think you've got some good picks throughout the field. This week you've also got the nice little curveball of Juan Pablo returning in the number 12 for Penske. You've got Trevor Bayne coming in the number 21. You've got Larson, who's good everywhere. You've got Austin Dillon, who has the 3-race top 15 streak. And then you've got Brett Moffitt in the number 66, who had a surprisingly strong run at Dover. I think that there's a possibility for there to be as many Group C Yahoo Group C drivers in the top 10 as there are either Group A or Group B. I think we could get 3 of those drivers in and have a kind of an equal balance across all 3 of Yahoo's groups. And that Michigan's a good place for the occasional dark horse and mostly marquee teams to shine.
That would be something to have. More Group C teams, C drivers than Group A drivers in the top 10.
Yeah, and Group A is a little more difficult to handicap this week. You've got some drivers that have done extremely well. Earnhardt, I think, has got to be one of the top picks because his 2 wins, other than his 2 most recent wins before Daytona, was at Michigan. They came about 2 years apart in each case, but obviously he runs well here. Vickers has run well here in the past. That's dropping down to Group B. But Michigan's one of those places where it's kind of a rhythm track. Drivers manage to find the right setup early in the week, and then just have a good week, even though their records don't always recommend them. You can't find those long streaks.
You've got to watch here. I had a veteran crew chief tell me once that he likens Michigan to a short track in that you can't afford to make a mistake in the pits because you have so many long green runs there that you're most likely pitting under green. If you screw up the track so fast, you're taking all your track position away. So the teams that are prone to problems, this might not be a place where you'd look at Kevin Harvick, for example, maybe.
Yeah, and it is a place then that would fit into Jeff Gordon's wheelhouse. Mm-hmm. He does well when he doesn't have to restart. Last week he lost at least 2 positions, sometimes 3 positions on every restart but one. And one of the times that he only lost 1 place on the restart, I think 2 of the drivers in front of him had problems. Blew up. Joey Logano, that's when Joey Logano exited. I think someone else exited right about that same time. So he's a difficult pick because you never know how long that last green flag segment is going to be. In the last couple of years, the final green flag segment at Michigan's been about 25 laps, which is right on that cusp of being enough time for someone to get back to the front, but not a guarantee that they're going to get back to the front. So my pick this week in Group A is probably Matt Kenseth. He's got the set of notes, or he's got the mental notes from his Roush Fenway days. Joe Gibbs has been strong at Michigan in the past. Kyle Busch has won here. Denny Hamlin has won here for this team. So they can get the job done. And this is good news for Kenseth because both Michigan races are in the regular season. I think if he makes the chase, one of the 2 Michigan races is going to be the reason that he makes the chase. That he's going to win one of these 2 races. Jump down to Group B, and you got the usual cast of characters. Logano and Keselowski certainly going to be strong there. They're going to help elevate Montoya's run. Greg Biffle, hard to overlook him. Carl Edwards because of the historic Roush Fenway strength. But Paul Menard is another one of those drivers, is probably your biggest dark horse out of Group B. He enters the weekend with 1 top 5, 4 top 10s, and a perfect streak of 5 top 15s in the last 5 races at the 2-mile tracks. So he's hit and miss. It's hard for him to sustain momentum, sustain streaks. But if you catch him on the right weekend, he's a great differentiator because not a lot of people are going to have him on their roster. I think you place Paul Menard on your provisional roster along with a safe pick like Logano, maybe Biffle, and then you look and see how he qualifies and practices. If he does well, you start him. Jumping down to Group C, this one's going to be a rough week to get the top performing Group C driver. But there's more at play in Group C than just figuring out who's going to be the best driver each week because we've got the allocation management that comes into play. You're really only looking at 2 drivers. You're looking at either Montoya or Trevor Bayne. Bayne's too uneven throughout his career in the Wood Brothers car. Because it's a part-time car, they're prone to parking when they have trouble. Montoya, I don't think, will do the same thing. And the Penske organization is so much stronger this year than it's been in the past that I think Montoya's got a shot at getting a top 10 finish to show NASCAR-dom that he still can do it. Trevor Bayne could be in that top 15. Larson and Dillon could finish in the top 10. But even if they do, if Montoya is only a couple of positions behind him, he's worth starting because he can only start Larson and Dillon 9 times throughout the year.
All right, that's what makes it interesting every week to play that Yahoo game is figuring out what you're going to do at the end of the races if you use or end of the season if you use all your good guys up front. Okay, so put everybody on the spot. Who's your pick for Michigan Speedway to win this week? Dan, you go first.
Matt Kenseth.
Matt Kenseth. Steve-O, who you got?
Well, I think I am going with Kyle Larson.
Kyle Larson for the win. Is that your third time you've picked him this year?
I think that is the third time. I'm going to hit it. Going to hit it pretty soon.
Yeah, you're almost getting up there to Bill Clark territory, taking Ryan Newman every week. Beth Ann, who you got?
Well, I'm going to go with who I normally pick at MIS, and that's Greg Biffle.
Greg Biffle. She doesn't care whether Roush is down or not. Biffle's the guy at Michigan. She's probably right. I just can't. I just think Roush is having too many problems. I'm going to go with the good 4 team this year, and flipping a coin. I think Keselowski finally closes the deal after 2 second-place finishes in a row and gets a win at his home track in Michigan. So that's my pick.
Hey, before we leave real quick, I want to give a shout-out to the family of Junie Donlevy.
Yes.
Passed away this, I believe it was yesterday, as a matter of fact.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to see a who's who of who became somebody, go to a website called racingreference.com and look up entries under the number 90 car, and you'll be amazed at the people that got in that car when they were nobody and then later became somebody. Junie Donlevy was the guy who put him in that car when they didn't have squat to be put in a car. The guy was just an all-round super, super race car owner.
Yeah, and by the way, it's racingreference.info.
Oh, .info. Okay, thanks.
Reference.info. They must have let the .com expire, because that goes someplace weird now. But.
Okay.
All right. Well, yeah. Our thoughts and prayers go to the Donlevy family. It's always a sad day when one of these legends goes, but he has a long legacy that will not be forgotten. So that's it this week. We'll be back again next Tuesday. We don't know what time, 2 or 3 o'clock, something like that. Hopefully we won't have the technical issues we had last week. We apologize for not being here last week, but the gremlins wouldn't let us. So enjoy the racing at Michigan Speedway this weekend. Beth Ann and I are going to be up there taking pictures and getting some up close and personal looks at what's going on this year. It'll be our first race in person this season, and thank you to the folks at MIS for letting us in, unlike the Pocono folk. So thanks, guys. You can watch a replay of this show if you weren't able to join us live on our Facebook page or on our YouTube page, or I will put a link up on the On Pit Row website as well. So thanks, everybody. See you all next week. Enjoy the races.
You've just been on Pit Row, and now you're up to speed with the best information about the world of NASCAR. Come back next week and join the pit crew, Steve and Charlie, and go on Pit Row. On Pit Row is a presentation of Bench Racing Productions.
I'm Tony Stewart. You're listening to the fastest 2 hours in radio with Charlie and Steve. You're on Pit Row. Take it from me, don't speed.
This is On Pit Row. On Pit Row.